Welcome to Forgotten Horrors, where history's most chilling mysteries refuse to stay buried. I'm your guide into the shadows, where true crime meets the supernatural. Today we journey to rural Bavaria, 1922, where a family heard ghostly footsteps in their attic for months before 6 people were brutally murdered. What makes this case truly terrifying? The killer didn't just vanish. He lived with the decomposing bodies for 3 days, as if the farmhouse belonged to him. This is the story of Hinterkaifeck, Germany's most haunting unsolved mystery, where mysterious footprints led to a house of horrors, but never led away. The Hinterkaifeck murders, Germany's most terrifying unsolved mystery. In the darkness of a Bavarian forest, 70 kilometers north of Munich, stands a small concrete monument marking one of history's most chilling unsolved mysteries. The Hinterkaifeck murders of 1922 represent more than just a crime. They're a descent into supernatural terror that continues to haunt Germany over a century later. 6 people were brutally murdered, and their killer lived among the decomposing bodies for 3 days, creating a nightmare that defies explanation and challenges our understanding of human evil. What makes this case truly terrifying isn't just the violence, but the months of supernatural warnings that preceded it, the methodical precision of the murders, and the disturbing behavior of a killer who seemed to possess otherworldly knowledge of his victims' every move. This is the story of how a family's growing fear of paranormal activity culminated in their systematic annihilation by someone or something that remains nameless to this day. 6 months of growing terror. The horror began not with murder, but with fear. In September 1921, 6 months before the killings, the Gruber family's maid, Riga, fled the isolated farmstead in absolute terror. She claimed the house was haunted, reporting disembodied footsteps echoing through the attic when the house was empty, and an overwhelming sense of being watched by malevolent eyes. She heard voices when no one was there, and experienced such intense dread that she vowed never to return, abandoning her job and income rather than spend another night in what she believed was a cursed place. The Gruber family. Andreas, 63, his wife Cecilia, 72, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabrielle, 35, and her 2 young children, tried to dismiss Riga's claims as superstition. But as winter approached, the supernatural activity intensified with terrifying precision. Andreas discovered footprints in fresh snow, leading from the dark forest directly to their farmhouse. But crucially, there were no tracks leading back. Something had approached their home and never left. The family began hearing those same ghostly footsteps Riga had described, methodical, deliberate sounds coming from the attic above their heads. When Andreas searched the space, torch in hand, he found nothing but darkness and the creaking of old wood. Yet the sounds continued, night after night, as if someone was pacing above them, watching, waiting, planning. A Munich newspaper appeared on their property that none of them had purchased, its presence inexplicable and deeply unsettling. Then their house key vanished, leaving them vulnerable to whatever presence seemed to be circling their home like a predator. By March 1922, the terror had reached a crescendo. The family was living in constant fear, jumping at every sound, checking locks obsessively, but somehow unable to leave the place that had been their home for generations. Andreas confided to neighbors that he felt a demonic presence in the house, though he never contacted police. Perhaps he feared they wouldn't believe him. Perhaps he suspected that whatever was stalking his family was beyond the help of mortal law enforcement. The new maid's final day. On March 31st, 1922, a new maid arrived to replace the terrified Riga. Maria Baumgartner, 44, was escorted to the farmstead by her sister, who left after a brief visit, likely the last person to see the family alive. Maria had no idea she was walking into her tomb. That evening, as darkness fell over the isolated farm, surrounded by the ominous Bavarian forest, known locally as the Witch's Wood, 6 people would die in a methodical execution that displayed inhuman calculation and supernatural precision. The killer struck with the patience of something that had been watching, learning, planning for months. 4 family members were lured to the barn one by one: Andreas, his wife Cecilia, daughter Victoria, and 7-year-old granddaughter Cecilia. Each was killed with precise blows from a mattock, a farm tool that became an instrument of terror in hands that knew exactly how to use it. The precision was surgical, the method revealing intimate knowledge of both the victims' routines and the layout of their property. But the true horror lay in what happened next. After the barn murders, the killer entered the house with keys he shouldn't have possessed and murdered 2-year-old Josef in his bassinet and Maria in her bedchamber. The autopsy would later reveal that young Cecilia survived for hours after her attack, her small hands clutching clumps of her own hair that she had torn out in unimaginable terror before finally succumbing to her injuries. The bodies in the barn were carefully stacked and covered with hay and boards, as if the killer was tidying up after a job well done. 3 days with the dead. What followed defies rational explanation and enters the realm of the truly supernatural. For 3 to 4 days after the murders, the killer remained at the farmstead, living among the decomposing corpses, with a comfort that suggests either complete psychoses or something beyond human psychology. During this time, the killer fed the livestock, ate food from the kitchen, lit fires in the fireplace, and maintained normal farm operations, as if the property belonged to him. Neighbors observed smoke rising from the chimney throughout the weekend, unaware that it came from fires lit by a murderer, warming himself beside 6 rotting bodies. On April 1st, local artisan Michael Plockel passed by the farm and noticed someone had heated the oven. When a figure approached him with a lantern, blinding him with light before he could see a face, Plockel fled, but not before noticing that the smoke from the fireplace carried a revolting smell that may have been evidence being destroyed. The killer even tore off the March 31st page from the family's wall calendar and displayed April 1st, as if marking the beginning of a new era of possession over the property. This methodical attention to detail, combined with the intimate knowledge of farm operations and apparent comfort with death, painted a picture of someone who had been watching the family for months, or something that possessed knowledge no mortal should have. The gruesome discovery. The bodies were discovered on April 4th, when neighbors noticed the family's absence from church and young Cecilia's unexplained absence from school. Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor with his own dark connections to the family, led a search party to the farm. What they found in the barn defied belief. 4 bodies stacked like cordwood, covered with hay, their faces destroyed by savage blows from the mattock. The crime scene was immediately contaminated, as dozens of curious locals walked through the property, some even cooking meals in the kitchen where the killer had recently dined. The killer's 3-day occupation had left the farmstead in an eerie state of suspended normalcy. Livestock well fed, beds made, fires recently extinguished. It was as if the murders had been absorbed into the daily rhythm of the farm, becoming just another chore completed by methodical hands. Inspector Georg Reingruber from Munich led the investigation, but the damage was done. No fingerprints were collected despite the technique being available in 1922. No crime scene sketches were made, and crucial evidence was lost or contaminated. In a desperate attempt to solve the case, authorities even resorted to the supernatural, decapitating the victims and sending their heads to Munich clairvoyants in hopes that psychic analysis might reveal the killer's identity. Suspects shrouded in mystery. The investigation unveiled a cast of suspects worthy of a Gothic horror novel. Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the neighbor who discovered the bodies, exhibited suspicious behavior that suggested either guilt or supernatural knowledge. He entered the house alone during the discovery, moved bodies at the crime scene, and made specific comments about ground conditions that seemed to indicate foreknowledge. Some theorized he was the father of young Joseph and had killed the family to cover up the relationship, but his alibis held, and he successfully sued those who accused him. More chilling was the theory that Victoria's husband, Karl Gabriel, reported killed in World War I, had actually survived and returned from the dead to exact revenge on the family that had descended into incest and abuse during his absence. Gabriel's body was never recovered from the French trenches, and some claim to have seen him in the area around the time of the murders. The idea that a man reported dead for 8 years had returned to systematically execute his former family added a supernatural dimension that authorities couldn't dismiss. The Gump brothers, Adolf and Anton, emerged as suspects when their sister made a deathbed confession in 1951, naming both as the perpetrators. Adolf had connections to violent paramilitary groups, but he died in 1944 before he could be questioned. Anton was arrested but released due to insufficient evidence, taking whatever secrets he possessed to his grave. Modern theories and eternal mystery. In 2017, statistician Bill James proposed the most compelling modern theory in his book, The Man from the Train. James suggests the killer was Paul Mueller, a German immigrant who committed a series of family murders in America between 1898 and 1912, before returning to Germany when patterns were being noticed. The Hinterkaifeck murders bear his signature: isolated farm families, use of blunt farm tools, stacking of bodies, and no robbery motive. This theory transforms the case from a local mystery into part of an international reign of terror by a methodical family annihilator. Yet even this explanation fails to account for the supernatural elements that preceded the murders. The footprints that led to the farm but never left, the months of ghostly sounds in the attic, the mysterious newspaper, the missing keys. These details suggest something beyond ordinary criminal behavior. The killer's intimate knowledge of the property, his comfort with remaining at the scene for days, and his ability to lure victims one by one to their deaths suggests someone with either supernatural powers or months of careful surveillance. In 2007, students from the German Police Academy re-examined the case using modern forensic techniques. They identified a prime suspect but refused to reveal the name out of respect for living descendants. Their conclusion: the case remains unsolvable due to contaminated evidence, the passage of time, and the destruction of the farmstead in 1923. The murder weapon, a blood-covered mattock, was only found during demolition, hidden in the same attic where the family had heard those ghostly footsteps for months. The farmstead's final chapter. Within a year of the murders, the Hinterkaifeck farmstead was completely demolished, its walls torn down to remove the traumatic reminder of evil that had occurred there. But even in destruction, the property revealed its secrets. During demolition, workers found the murder weapon hidden in the attic, with dried blood still clinging to its blade, along with a penknife that had been used to finish off young Cecilia. The same attic where the family had heard mysterious footsteps now yielded the tools of their destruction. Today, a small concrete monument marks the spot where the farmstead once stood, surrounded by the same dark forest from which those mysterious footprints emerged over a century ago. The site has become a pilgrimage destination for true crime enthusiasts and paranormal investigators, many of whom report strange sensations and unexplained phenomena when visiting the memorial. The case continues to influence German folklore, inspiring countless books, films, and documentaries that attempt to explain the unexplainable. A mystery that transcends mortality. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain more than an unsolved crime. They represent a confrontation with evil that seems to transcend human understanding. The victims' skulls, sent to Munich for psychic analysis, were lost during World War II, taking with them any hope of modern DNA analysis. The crime scene was destroyed, the witnesses are dead, and the secrets of that terrible night have been carried to graves across Germany. Yet the case refuses to die, continuing to captivate and terrify new generations with its blend of documented historical fact and supernatural mystery. In the end, the Hinterkaifeck murders force us to confront the possibility that some evil transcends our ability to understand or explain it. In that dark Bavarian forest, something stalked a family for months, executed them with inhuman precision, and vanished into the night, leaving behind only questions that may haunt us forever. The footprints in the snow that led to the farmstead but never away serve as the perfect metaphor for this case, evidence of something that came from the darkness and returned to it, leaving behind only terror, mystery, and the chilling certainty that some secrets are meant to remain buried in the shadows of history. The shadows of Hinterkaifeck still stretch across more than a century, and some secrets refuse to give up their dead. If this case sent chills down your spine, make sure to subscribe to Forgotten Horrors for more supernatural mysteries that blur the line between the living and the dead. Hit that like button if you dare to explore where history's darkest secrets hide, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a descent into the unknown. Until next time, remember, some footprints lead nowhere, and some mysteries are meant to haunt us forever.